Welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special guest with us, Segun. Segun is the creator of. I can start with saying Segun is actually my friend,
Oh,
and he's also the creator of Chakra UI. And today I am going to be having him as my guest in my first interview series that I hope I get to do more of. So Shegun, thank you so much for joining us. Can you?
yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me as well, Gift. And I mean, it's an honor to be like the first like official guest for this kind of like interview setup for you. So, I mean, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for, I mean, thinking of inviting me. Even though I'm your friend and we just every day, but it's like sometimes you can just forget to like invite your friend. I'm like, this is my friend now. I should bring him to my channel so
Sure.
we can talk here. But I'm really happy to be here for sure.
Yeah, and remember how we had this conversation like what last year, I think December, and now it's happening. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, I'm happy too.
So I'll start by asking you to. I mean, we already know your name is Shegun, but can you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do for work, and yeah.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Segun Adebayo. For those that don't know my full name, most of the time I prefer people call me Sage because that's like really short and nice. Um, um, for the past five years roughly, I've sort of been focusing on the field of UI engineering. So, by design, I feel like I'm a UI engineer, and I focus a whole lot on design systems and accessibility and building like UI components, robust UI components to help people build their applications and like websites like with speed. That's basically what got me into Chakra UI. So, so that's pretty much a short story.
Nice. Very interesting. I am kind of curious now where the name Sage came from. Is it like Naruto themed or?
Yeah, for sure. It's like, I mean, I'm a Naruto fan for sure. So it's like, interesting is like, it's all, when I think about it, I think like the first time I mentioned it to my friends, they were laughing at me. It's like, you think like life is more serious than Naruto. Like, you think you can just be carrying Naruto name everywhere, and it doesn't work that way. And I'm like, let me try at least, right? So, it's just a very funny story in the Naruto series. It's like when Naruto gets into this mode called Sage mode, it becomes very fast and powerful. So I'm just like, okay, that's the kind of name I want, right?
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So you mentioned Chakra UI. Can you tell us a bit about what Chakra UI is for people that don't already know? Because yeah, I am pretty sure a lot of people know this. But yeah, just tell
Yeah,
us.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you build websites and applications in general, you find that like there's a ton of things you have to do to get like your application working right. You spend a lot of time building components. You spend a lot of time making sure they're functional, making sure they're accessible, making sure color contrast is in place, and that can pretty much take up 80% of your time and get you exhausted really fast, right? So, uh, it's also like a big struggle if you're a front-end engineer working with a designer trying to get your designs like perfect because you're gonna struggle with lots of CSS and like lots of important all over the place just to get everything working right, right. And generally, when it comes to like the design of the components, right? So those kind of things take time. So these are the reasons why like I decided to build like this library called Chakra UI. So Chakra UI, in general, the way I define that is like a reusable, simple, and accessible component library that gives you all the building blocks, pretty much like a Lego set that you can put together to build like your websites or your applications fast.
Very interesting. I personally, I understand and I can relate to when you say you don't want to be tweaking designs all over the place, like or writing custom CSS.
Yeah.
I feel like Chakra UI already does most of the heavy lifting for you as a front end developer, so you can quickly, build out your projects. And
Yes.
I think another part that I really like that I felt like you should have mentioned is the fact that it's accessibility focused. Like most of the components are quite accessible from like just using them. You get
Yes,
it.
for sure. Yes, for sure. So, like, I mean, I can definitely like elaborate more on
Yeah.
that. It's like, accessibility is one thing where you don't get to learn when you're sort of growing or getting started in tech, in front end in general. You learn HTML and CSS, but you never really get to learn the accessible parts of these frameworks and these languages, right? So I would argue that HTML and CSS, they are actually pretty robust themselves, right? And there's a lot of thought that has gone into these different libraries, HTML and CSS. So what we've done with Chakra UI is to leverage all of these existing built-in accessibility specifications. Right, there's this like body of like consortium that sort of put together like a spec for building any component or any widget. And that's like, it can be really boring going through all this spec because it's like, it feels like you're reading an encyclopedia. And so what we've done ahead of time is to go through all of these components and ensure that every component that we build meets this accessibility spec. And you don't have to think about them as a developer. That is like one of the really cool things about Chakra UI. It helps you, gives you everything you need to build fast, but you can be very confident that what you build is accessible.
Very interesting. Yeah, I definitely like it because of that's because I am also very interested in accessibility and building accessible applications.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Talking about, did you say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I said that's awesome.
All right. Talking about open source Chakra UI, I'm curious, how long have you been in the open source space, and how long have you been building Chakra UI for?
Yeah, Chakra UI launched September 2019. So that's like pretty much like 1 month and maybe 1 year or 7 months roughly. So that's how long Chakra UI has been in existence. But I would say like, I mean, when it comes to building Chakra UI, I think it would be roughly 2.5 years in the making right now.
Interesting. And when you started building this, was it out of frustration of anything, or were you like trying to build something else and then you discovered this idea, oh, this would be nice? But I'm just curious how the idea for Chakra came.
Yeah, in general, like, it's very interesting when people think about like open source, because people want to do open source for different reasons. So it's like, I mean, maybe you have some free time and you just want to like do some open source stuff, or you want to gain some extra visibility or popularity. That's why you make open source libraries. For me, I think for me it's kind of different though, because I wanted to help my friends. I think this is where it came from. So it's like at the time I think like 4 years ago, roughly in Lagos, Nigeria, I worked for a company called Tuteria, and at Tuteria I was working with like two really amazing like engineers. Like, I mean, top level geeky class engineers, and it's like it was a really interesting experience. But I think one of the major issues or scenarios I found myself getting into every single time is like, I make a design. One of the things I probably did not mention earlier is like, I'm sort of a designer and a developer sort of like at the same time. So I came from a design background and then I switched to development. And one of the things I saw working with them is like, when I do a design and I hand it over to them, it's always a continuous, like constant struggle to get them to align this design with the output that they make. And that's literally what the customers will see. All right. So it's a little bit, I mean, it can be frustrating, honestly, because you make a design, you get the buy-in of the stakeholders, the CEO, the board of directors say this design is awesome. Let's go ahead to make this. And then you send it up to some developer and then they decide that I'm going to make my own version of this design. And then they do that and it doesn't even match in any way, right? So I think I went through tons of like cycles of revisions, and I just like felt like one of the core tenets of design is sort of having empathy for the users and for the customers. But I think one extra thing we can extend that to is having empathy for our teammates and our colleagues, which is like going to them and understanding like what the problem is. Like, I mean, I always send these designs to you, and almost every single time it doesn't turn out right. Is there any issue going on? And like, what could be the problem? And I think 80% of that reason would be like the tools that we use isn't so flexible. Right. I mean, it's not exactly in this. It's not exactly that they're lazy people or they're not able to get things done. These are really hardworking, smart people. Right. So, I mean, I ended up realizing that, I mean, can't we build a better tool I mean, if you think the tool is the problem, then let's try to fix the tool. Obviously, at the time, I just said that out of like complete ignorance because obviously I don't know how to build this tool at the time. And then they're like, I mean, dude, we don't have the time for that. Like, we want to launch our product instead. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna try to delve into this and try to challenge myself to build this, right? So this is where the journey started, and until like 3 years after, I mean, it's a different story.
That's a very interesting backstory, and I kind of share the same sentiments with you between developer and designer's relationship. Uh,
Yeah,
it's crazy. But yeah, I'm very happy to hear that this is where Chakra UI stemmed from, and so far so good. It's been a good journey, I would say. Even if I'm not the creator, I can always see I achieved it. So that's good.
yeah,
Um, Now talking about your work in Chakra UI, you've been doing this for
yeah.
almost 2 years or more than, right? And you also work as a full-time engineer. So how do you manage your time between open source and your full-time job?
Yeah, that's always like each time someone asks me that question, I always take some time to think about it because it's also something I always ask myself that, I mean, how do you get the time to do this kind of thing?
Right.
But like, I think it boils down to two things for me. I think one is like, I mean, the open source world is very like volatile, like because if you build a library or you create an open source project, that sort of hits the mainstream. Like, I mean, maybe with some sheer luck, or some people like just like make it popular or decide to, or it just gets popular for some reason. In as much as that is a good thing, that is also like a the not so good side of that. It's
Yeah.
like you get to fix like more, you get more issues, more code you have to review, more pull requests. People want to chat with you, the creator, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, literally everywhere they want to chat with you and they're following you everywhere you go. And that can sort of lead to some like anxiety and some nervousness in general. So, I mean, aside from even like maintaining open source and my work, it's mostly like maintaining open source and my life in general because there are people that are following you, stalking you everywhere. People now have a certain standard that they placed you in their minds. And obviously, it's not up to me to meet those standards. But just that feeling that, I mean, these guys just like put you on some interesting pedestals. You don't even think of yourself in that way anyway. So it's like, it's just very interesting. So the way I balance open source and life, I think, and I start with work in general, is I think I have to be very picky of the kind of work that I choose, right, or the kind of company that I work for.
Yeah.
Right. So, because Chakra UI is sort of like gaining some popularity, I think one of the things I try to take care of is like any company I choose to work with must at least give me some flexibility with time. Right. So, if I sort of get a sense that work is going to be like a war zone where I have to be on my laptop like some ninja every day, every night, every weekend, I just back up from those kind of jobs most of the time because I don't think it's a good fit for me.
Yeah.
And I just have the personal belief that, I mean, I'm supposed to like work to live a good life, not like my whole life should be work, right? So I
Yeah.
want to be able to have that balance as well because to have some free time to do open source and also some free time for yourself requires some sort of discipline. So the baseline when it comes to work is I just want to make sure where I work is a very fun, lively place, and I have some flexibility with time. And obviously, the icing to the cake would be like if they also use Chakra UI, it's like
Yeah.
100% tick. It's like I'm in, right? So I try to be picky with that. And the second thing is also to definitely try to manage my time, right? So I have very limited time, so I tend to ask for help from other people a lot of times. So I want to be in charge of like the high level things that have to do with the architecture of the library itself.
Mhm.
But then when it comes to like low level details, like this bug is not working in Firefox 11 or Firefox 12, we need to verify if it's a real bug or not. I tend to, luckily enough, I've been fortunate or blessed to have like a really awesome team of people and friends around me that can help me like go into these issues and try to find what the issue is and even solve them. So they go as far as just like taking a lot of burden out out of the way for me to focus on like improving the library in general, because it's with open source is really interesting. People want to push you in directions you don't want to go, but then you also want to retain control of the vision and the direction of the library. So it's like a push and pull scenario. But I mean, I think in general it's been really good. Top key things would be like being choosing the company that I work for, asking for help, because time is just very short. You only get 24 hours in a day, and you cannot spend all your time on like that open source, and spend more time thinking about the overall direction of the library, not like little tiny bug fixes. Because it's open source, people can open PRs to fix issues. You don't have to be the one to do that, right? And everything is not urgent in open source, so gaining control of your life is most likely the best way.
Yeah, quite interesting, because if you notice, I was just nodding very hard, because a lot of things that you said I can definitely relate to, even though I am not an open source creator or maintainer, but I also do like content creation on the side, and I also have a full-time job. So time management is kind of a struggle as well in my
Yeah.
area of exercise, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
Very interesting.
But how do you manage to keep up with all of that as well? I'm curious.
It's actually I mix things up. So I've not found something that works for me.
Okay.
I try different things. Right now, I try to push everything that is not related to my full-time job to my weekends, right? So, for instance, this is the first time I'll be shooting or I'll be making a video on a weekday. I usually do it on weekends, and
Honestly.
for other things that I do, like writing articles or speaking, I then do that like not during work hours. Like probably if I stop working by 5 p.m., I can spend some time, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours before going to bed during the week.
Honestly.
So that works right now. But the other parts that I'm trying to fix is not having to spend my entire weekend doing, because I say I push everything to weekend,
2 weekends, yeah.
spend like some weekends I use the entire Saturday to make videos or to edit videos or to just take care of other things that I do, right? And when I try to look at it in the sense that work and life balance, your weekend is supposed to be for yourself to rest, right?
Yeah.
My weekend is more like a work day. And so right now I am trying to push everything to just Saturday and have at least Sunday to myself.
Sunday to yourself, yeah. That's awesome.
But again, there is also this procrastination thing that everybody struggles with, including myself. Like
Yeah, for sure.
I'll schedule this video. I'll make it. I'll be watching Netflix before you know it's 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So I'm still looking for the best possible way to manage all of that. But what I'm doing right now works. So yeah.
Awesome.
So you mentioned you mentioned something about community, like you have a team that helps you, so you are not focused on doing like the low things that is related to chakra now. So I am curious to learn from you how you feel about how much the community has embraced chakra so far, because I know that apart from you, you also have like a team of people working focused on Chakra UI. But apart from that, there are also people that use the library, of course, companies that also adopted Chakra UI and all of this. So just how do you think of, or how do you feel about this in general?
Yeah, the feeling part is like really easy. I think it's actually like double feeling at the same time. So like I feel really like excited and like happy for that, because one of the things I'm always grateful for is the fact that this is like my first like official, like it's not whether official and unofficial open source project. This is like the first project where I go to GitHub and I hit like public. I want to make this public, and then it just like goes live, and And that was ultimately, I would say that that's actually like my first open source project or my first GitHub project. That's like very interesting. Right, so it's like, I'm happy with how it turned out. And initially, it started with like the feeling of like being anxious because you're not sure what is going to play out, and the slight feeling of fear, because like your friends are like, dude, like people on GitHub and Twitter are not smiling. They're gonna like deal with you if you're not sure what you're doing. So you have to be sure. And because you're just getting into this field, I think you need some 3 to 5 years before you can start doing open source stuff. When all these thoughts start to come back to you and start playing back in your head, then it just like, it just leads to like some self-doubt whether I really want to do this or not. But for me, I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it anyway. Like the worst case scenario is I'll close it. I'll say goodbye, thank you so much, and I make it private and I move on. Right. So I was happy that I sort of had the courage to like just make it public either ways, and I'm glad like a lot of people have embraced the library. A lot of people have contributed to the library, and like people keep showing up each time to help to improve and grow the library. And I think most importantly, like companies start to show up to like help you evolve the library, and when you start to see that, it's generally a good sign that at least there's a future for the library. Even though you are still trying to find your feet, trying to balance all the different parts together, but somewhere you get the confidence that hey, this has a pretty good future. And I think the second feeling is just a feeling of like it's not exactly uncertainty, but you also feel like concerned and worried somehow because the more popular something gets, the more demand it places on you and your time and most likely your life in general. Because like people pull you to conferences, they pull you to like different programs, and like you have to find a way to balance all that yourself, and no one's gonna do that for you. So that's the only tricky part. And if you're not able to manage that, I think it will just lead to like some burnout or some like it can take you down to dark places if you're not careful. That's what I would say, because in as much as being popular, like and having a popular library is good, the downsides also like can be very tricky. So keeping the balance of both feelings. I'm excited, I'm happy, and I'm also like kind of careful at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So I've seen this trend, not very popular, but I've seen it happen for a lot of people that they, like you mentioned, have your first open source projects that became mainstream, like very popular, and they kind of want to focus more on doing that. So they quit their full-time job and decide to, do open source full-time. Is that something you're thinking of doing, or has that thought just crossed your mind at any point in time?
When I was maintaining Chakra UI, I'm not sure if that crossed my mind, honestly. I mean, each time I think about it, I think at some point when I launched Chakra UI, I went to Open Collective. And then I'm just like trying to check, okay, for popular open source projects, like all the people, what's the revenue model like to see if I can sustain myself with this. And then I go in there and I see some not too interesting numbers. And that was like a little bit discouraging at first. And I just thought to myself that I'm not sure I want to like go full time on this right now. So it's like that's the initial thought, and then over time I start to realize that I'd say maybe my mind starts to mature a bit, and then I started to think about the fact that having an open source project is just it's a tool that gets you attention. So it gets you attention, but then as a creator, it's left to you to know what you want to use this attention to do, right? You could decide to I feel like the open source library that you make is just a free tool. It's sort of like a lead magnet to something people are supposed to pay for, or people are supposed to like pay you for. It could be a course, it could be an ebook. It's more like the experience you've gained building the library is what is like worth selling, and you could use that to like package all that knowledge into something people pay for, or build other products with your library. Or it doesn't even have to be related to your library. The thing is that your library has pulled the attention that you need, and then it's sort of left to you to use that attention to buy something for yourself. That's sort of like the way I put it in my head. So from that perspective, I'm definitely like I've been thinking about ways to not just focus on open source full time, like but focus on building products full time, and not like working officially like 9 to 5, but just building a couple of products and then also having time to maintain like open source project. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I now that I think about it, I think that is like the best solution to this because, like you mentioned, open source is great, but when it comes to funding of this project, it's also not that good in some
Yeah.
maybe the most very popular libraries like Vue.js are good, and I would say not just because individual people contribute to it, but because they have like these big companies backing them, right? So
Yeah.
that's sustainable for like say Evan you in that case. But I am pretty sure it took a lot of time before he was able to get to that stage. So just this idea of you creating things like courses, paid products out of the brand you already built for yourself from your library. I think that is like the best option for anybody that's into open source that's thinking of like doing something similar. So yeah, I definitely love that. And
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
to
I agree.
yeah, seeing what you do. I think you have already done something which was going to ask you about next. The Chakra UI Pro. This is like
Mhm.
a paid version of Chakra UI, right? Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the key things I wanted to mention to the previous point is like the tricky bit though is like with open source and trying to like get some support, financial support to build that. It's mostly about the intention or like the why. If it's like the intention of building the open source library is to make sure you cash out, you just want to cash out, there's a high chance that you burn out really fast and you're not going to have the tenacity to like push through because open source doesn't get popular in 1 year. I
Mm,
mean, it doesn't get popular in 1 week either. So just like a normal business, literally, it takes time to get, I mean, to gain traction, and you have to keep improving and innovating. But if your focus is all about like I just want to make this money and just like run away and close my open source project, I mean it's not gonna last. So it's also like what mentioning that I mean making sure your intentions are in check. Because honestly, when I started all of this Chakra UI, I just wanted to be as helpful as possible to other people. And I mean, that's not to say that I didn't have my own problems, but I would say like I mean, way earlier before working on Chakra UI, I used to like I used to be like a freelance designer. So
okay.
like I worked remotely for a ton of companies. So that meant that I had some money in the bank to sort of rely on and to keep me because hey, the red flag is like if you don't have money to take care of yourself, just get a job first. Like you don't want to go into open source because people are going to demand for your time for free,
Yeah.
and that's not going to help you. You just want to make sure you sort out that first, and that gave me the leeway to focus on open source. And after a while, I saw that I mean people are getting value from this product already, and people are starting to ask for like some more components. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, can you help me make this date picker components, or can you help me make this like app layout components and some dashboard components? It'd be really nice. And I think to myself, I'm really trying to squeeze out time to even maintain the library. And then
Yeah.
people are out there asking me if I'm gonna like add some more components. So to me, it just like seems like natural as a request for. I might be interested in doing that, but it's not gonna be for free, right? So that's mostly like the perspective I took that from. So I thought to myself, I'm gonna like try to build something like this and not do it myself this time, but do it with someone else, right? So I got my friend Chris, who reached out to me and had a couple of ideas like on how we can push Chakra Pro forward, and we felt like a natural partnership. So we're kind of working together to see how we can deliver more value on top of what we currently do with Chakra UI.
That's very nice. That's very nice. Um, I have one question again about chakra.
Yes, please tell me.
So far, or recently, since you've been working on it, what has been the most challenging thing so far for you building Chakra UI?
Uh, Okay, so there are two things. I think one is like I can say that I'm very confidently, and the other one is more like a mental thing. I'll talk about that. I think the first one is like the most challenging bit is trying to keep up, and to keep up and keep improving the library, despite the pull to fix bugs and like add features, right? So this is like the most challenging bit. It's like keeping up with the tooling, monorepo,
Mm.
yarn workspaces, so many packages, release management, change log management, like Discord and community management, GitHub discussions, and it's like, oh my god, this is this is a lot. And then on top of that, you get people that pull you in for conferences, for talks, and then those times are exciting, but at the same time, they're also demanding of like different things just call for your attention, and keeping up with everything is like definitely challenging on a high level. And I mean, that's not to mention like also recruiting people to help you. People don't come by themselves most of the time, so you have to literally go through GitHub and find consistent people and reach out to them and try to convince them that this library has a future and their key ideas you're trying to push forward. And they have to buy into that because hey, they are working in a company,
Right.
and there's a high chance that if they buy into it, they're most likely going to influence their people, people they work with, to also buy into it. So so the cost of convincing someone to join your team is pretty high. And then I think the weird part is you're not exactly paying them.
Mhm.
So it's like, I mean, trying to get people that voluntary with their time is very hard. So that's the tricky part. That's the most challenging bit. Keeping up with all these different pieces is definitely big. It's also a big challenge. I think the second one is like, the pace of innovation, which
Mm.
is like
Yeah.
um, innovating, like changing like the core ideas of the library over time as you go, being fully aware that there's someone that might be in one garage trying to build something that's way better, that was planning to release it, but it's just maybe he's afraid to release it, or is even going to release it next week, that most likely like sweep you out of the market, and just trying to stay relevant and like also like keep innovating, bringing in new and fresh perspectives to this like library, and the not just the library but the overall ecosystem when it comes to building components, right? So when people think of Chakra UI, they should just get a sense of how Chakra UI stuff is being organized, or how if they see Chakra UI stuff, they should be able to tell that this quality or this level of quality and attention to detail
Yeah.
is from Chakra UI. So that bit is also challenging. And it's like, you're in a field, competing with, it's not exactly a competition, but trying to stay relevant. I mean, amongst a ton of libraries, and we know this front end world is like
Change.
so many things come up,
Yeah.
things change every single year, every 2 years. So like trying to keep up with that pace of innovation too is pretty challenging. Yes.
Yeah. I can imagine the amount of work that goes into all of this. Just the first problem or challenge you mentioned alone, I'm already thinking, oh my god, that's a lot of context, right?
Yeah.
To answering issues, to like merging pull requests. That's just a lot of context switching. But yeah,
Yeah.
um, I would say kudos to you and your team because you all are doing a very good job so far. So,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
um, just for teaser's sake, if feel free to disclose if you don't want to, then that's fine. But can you share the next big thing you're working on right now for Chakrai? Is there like a new release coming up? I know you released version 1 recently, or
Yeah.
is there
Yeah.
something new coming
Yeah,
up?
so like version one was the big thing. Yeah, so like right now, obviously there are other big things. I recently did a live stream where I said I'll show the future of Chakra UI, and that involves things like state machines. State machines is a fairly new concept.
Yeah.
in the front end world, even though it has been existing for ages in other fields of engineering, like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. It's like we put engineering in our titles, but we never really get to do much anything that has to do like engineering aside from like if else switch logic and and things like that, right? Yeah, so so like state machines sort of gets us close to this point where we're able to properly model a component and the
Mm,
logic for not just a component but the logic of your product. Imagine if it was really easy to visualize the state and the logic of a life of like your old product by just seeing some flow diagrams. And those flow diagrams are not just diagrams; they are all working code that's already in the product, right? So this kind of visualization tool at the component level is not just a visualization tool, but it's a key modeling tool. So it's more like you're able to model how an accordion works. You're able to model how like a number input or a model works, and people can easily see and visualize the logic, and that helps you prevent a lot of bugs. And if people want to fix bugs, they're not fixing it by adding some extra if condition, but you're looking at the full model of that component and trying to weigh the consequences of adding some new stuff in there to how it works. So, modeling these components in a way that is like they're sort of like using state charts and state machines is also
mm,
is like the next big thing we are looking towards for Chakra UI. Yeah.
that's very interesting. Just last week on Friday, I that was the first time hearing about state machines from the conference I was part of. I co-organized, I would say. Maya gave a talk on how to use state machines with Vue. I think it was quite.
Oh, I see.
I have never heard about it, and now you're talking about it, so I should probably pay more attention to it because it seems
Yeah,
like
for sure.
to be the next big thing.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. I think it. I think it is already the next big thing. And the way you know that is like, this has been in existence for a long time. I think way before both of us was even born. It's like this concept of state machines have been in existence, and we just needed someone to sort of bring this to like our front end tooling. And I think like I mean libraries already. I think we started to see like lots of libraries. A couple of libraries start to implement this in the front end, and I think in the next at least 2 3 years, this will most likely be like the new Redux requirement for joining for getting a new job.
Yeah. I am definitely going to look into it. Yeah, for me.
Yeah,
Um,
awesome.
all right, so we are pretty much close to the end of this interesting chat so far. I have one final question for you, and this question is asking what advice do you have for developers that are looking to get into open source? Because, yeah, I know a lot of us have ideas in our heads, but we don't act upon it. And again, like you mentioned, it might be because of fear or something. So if you have any actionable advice that you can share for the folks that are interested, it would be nice.
Okay, let me try to think if there's like if there are like any big ideas or advice I would have like in any way. I don't think I'm in the best position to be like this authority figure to start giving you like step 1 to 10 of what to do for open source. But
Yeah.
I think a few things I would say from my own experience would be like uh, you want to handle or deal with the fear that you have. If you genuinely have like an idea and you want to like put that out in open source, like I think the first thing you battle with is internal conflict of like are you sure you want to do this, or like, is this really worth your time? Like, just go get a job instead. Of like,
Yeah.
obviously you have a job already. Is it not enough for you? Like, why do you want to add some extra, like, open source work on top of that? And it's even free for that matter. So these are I call this like the voices in your head that try to like put you down. But again, just know that it's just open source. Like, in as much as it sounds like it's gonna be some stress. At the same time, you can pull that back if it doesn't work out, right? So, I would say you can take the leap to sort of like put out your open source and see where it goes. If it doesn't work out, that's totally fine. Just keep it open and just like go your way and come back after a few years, and you might be surprised to see that people are actually using this library even more than you think, right? And I think the other thing too is like you want to be very objective about the state of your finance. I mean, when it comes to open source, like open source is gonna demand at least some time, depending on the library you're working on. If you're just doing a very small utility JavaScript, one simple function, I think it also depends on the robustness of your library. If you're doing a more like super low level one, something that's like super like Lodash, just one function in Lodash, you want to make that open source. I mean, you want to also check if this is something that exists, so you don't just duplicate efforts. But if you have some extra genuine or unique thing to add to any library, and you think that you want to make that open source, and that is gonna like improve the lives of many people out there, you also want to be sure that you're ready for that, at least from a personal standpoint. Just make sure that you have something going on in your life first when it comes to like finances, a job, before you think about these kind of things, right? And honestly, I would say like I cannot like say this without saying if you, I mean, if you come from like a continent like mine, Africa, I think this is a very huge one. I mean, uh, just make sure that you have something going for yourself and you have some sense of free time that you like to dedicate to this, because I think it's gonna be very helpful for you in general. And I think the last one would be that just try to be a contributor before you become a creator. I think it's gonna help. It's not. This is not a rule, because honestly, before I started, I wasn't a contributor to anything serious. I mean, but what I always say is like, before I made Chakra UI, I made a product called Career Lift. Right, Career Lift is like a resume builder. If you go to careerlift.com, you see like a web app resume builder that helps you create your resume really fast. I contributed a ton to that product because hey, I'm the owner of that product, and that has given me a lot of experience. So I was partly a contributor to that before sort of going into Chakra UI. So take your time, think about libraries that you use a lot. And even if it means going to the README to change some things, or go to the code and reorganize the code a little bit, just make it easy to understand, I think you'll be helpful because you get to learn what process is like. What's the process to open a PR? What's the review process like? How do you update docs? How do you write docs? I think these libraries already have systems in place, and contributing to these libraries would open your eyes to see like what these processes are, so that when you want to build your own, or when you have your own library, you can literally just like replicate that and even improve it.
Yeah, I agree with all these advice tips that you've shared so far, specifically the one about finance, because it's also very important to
Yeah.
think about it, right?
Yeah.
Don't want to be drinking Gary for my next
Yeah, so exactly.
Gary.
Exactly.
But, anyway, thank you so much, Segun. This
Yeah, it's a
was a
pleasure.
very interesting chat to have, and I'm pretty sure people watching would have taken something away from it as well. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, for anyone watching, if you have like questions, or like you think you've learned one or two things like really valuable, feel free to drop it in the comments. I mean, let other people, I mean, be able to sort of learn these things at a glance, instead of listening to like our long talk. I think it's very valuable. So thank you so much for having me, Gift.
You're welcome. Final question ish will be, where can people find you? I think I can just link most of your socials on the description, but also if you'd like to tell us where can
Yeah, for
people
sure.
you
Yeah,
find.
I think the top I think one of the top places you can find me is on Twitter. So I mean, I think it's like the Segun Adebayo, at the Segun Adebayo on Twitter, and then on LinkedIn as well. These are like the two top places. Every other one, I don't exactly pay much attention to them, except it has to do with my personal life and personal stuff. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. All right. Thank you so much, Shagun, and thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.
Awesome.